China is going to build the world's largest dam near India's border in Tibet. It's obvious that India can't do a thing against this decision, but this dam does put the northeast states of India in grave danger of possible flood scenarios. What steps can the government take to prevent such a possible catastrophe? Also, from a neutral POV, why is China even building the dam in the first place? Is it one of the ploys to keep India in check? Why are the Chinese playing double games against India by installing a dam on the Brahmaputra in Tibet? On the one hand, they are taking steps towards border de-escalation, and we thought there was some tiny hope for improvement in ties after the 2020 Galwan clashes. It seemed due to the trade war and increasing pressure from the US, China would inch closer to India and BRICS would get stronger. But as they say, never ever trust the Chinese, even if their economy stalls and they become weaker. So, what's the deal? What is the deal is the question. So, yes, the Chinese have announced plans to build the world's largest hydroelectric dam on the Brahmaputra River in Tibet. Or there they call the river the Yarlung Tsangpo. It's a Tibetan name. So they're planning to build a dam that is going to produce 3 times as much hydroelectricity as the Three Gorges Dam, which is also a Chinese dam. So that's going to be a gigantic dam. It's going to be on the Brahmaputra. And obviously, it's going to have an effect downstream. Should we open the map? We can, or should we? Okay, let's take a look at the map quickly. Let me remove this from the screen. Let's go to the map. And I'm not quite sure where this dam will be built. It will be built in Tibet, we know that. Now, the Brahmaputra River, as you know, it's a very large river and it flows through Arunachal Pradesh and Assam, and it goes into Bangladesh where it merges with the Ganga, and it's eventually called the Padma River. So this is the Brahmaputra. This is the coming river. Where is the Brahmaputra and where does it come from, and so on, so on, so forth. I think so. One thing we have to remember, maybe this is the Brahmaputra, is it? Yeah, this is the Brahmaputra. So it comes from Tibet. In Tibet, it's a reasonably small river, but it becomes gigantic in India. So the first thing we have to understand is that about 80% of the Brahmaputra's water comes from within India. Most of it comes from the rainfall that happens in the lush forests of Arunachal Pradesh. So about 80% of the water of the Brahmaputra comes from within India itself. So even if the Chinese cut off, let's say hypothetically, the flow of water of the Brahmaputra, it will impact only 20% of the flow. 80% will still continue as it is. So from that perspective, we don't need to worry that much. Now, secondly, another danger is that if the Chinese have dammed the river and then they suddenly release a large quantity of water from the dam, then what can happen? It can definitely flood the downstream areas. And as we know, Assam sees flooding every single year. Very extensive flooding happens every year in the rainy season because of the flooding of the Brahmaputra. The Brahmaputra is prone to flooding in the monsoons, in the rainy season. So this, if the Chinese at the same time that flooding is happening, if they release a large quantity of water, that can certainly worsen the situation. So these are the issues that we are facing and we will face once the Chinese build this dam. Now, the Chinese have in the past held India hostage to such water issues. I remember in the early 2000s, there was this buildup of an artificial lake in Tibet on a river called the Parichu or something. And there was the possibility that this artificial or natural dam, was it? I don't know. This dam would burst and it would flood very large parts of India and cause all kinds of damage. So this is something that Chinese have done for a long time. And if they build a dam on the river Brahmaputra in Tibet, it can certainly hold India hostage in this manner. So, what are the Chinese up to is the question. Why are they doing this? First of all, we have to understand they have the right to build any dam they want on their territory. They have no agreement with India or any other nation. about what kind of water usage rights each country has, and so on. There's no agreement of any kind. So they are well within the rights to build dams on territory they control, right? Um, Now, what has been the Chinese response to these concerns? Let's find out, right? So there is this article that let's put on the screen, and let's read it briefly. China defense plan to build world's largest dam on the Brahmaputra River in Tibet. The $137 billion project is being constructed in the ecologically fragile Himalayan region. Their foreign ministry spokesperson downplayed apprehensions on the country's plan to build the world's largest dam. This She said that the mega project will not affect riparian states, and its safety concerns have been addressed through decades of studies. So she's essentially the Chinese are essentially saying, trust us, trust what we are saying. There'll be no effect, there'll be no impact. That's not how the world works, right? So the $137 billion project is being constructed in the ecologically fragile Himalayan region, located along a tectonic plate boundary that can cause earthquakes. The region is tectonically unstable. We know that. And she said that the world's largest dam will not impact low-lying areas. She said China has always been responsible, blah, 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 for the development of cross-border rivers. And the hydropower development in Tibet has been studied in an in-depth way for decades. And safeguard measures have been taken for the security of the project and ecological and environmental protection. Yeah. So again, trust me, bro, is what they are saying. She added the project will not affect lower reaches. China will continue to maintain communication with countries in the lower reaches through existing channels and set up cooperation on disaster prevention and relief. The construction of the dam has been approved. It's going to be the planet's biggest infrastructure project in Tibet, close to the Indian border. It's going to be built at a huge gorge in the Himalayan reaches where the Brahmaputra River makes a huge U-turn to flow into Arunachal Pradesh and then eventually into Bangladesh. Uh, it will take at least a decade to build. It will require connecting to the grid further east as there's zero need, etc. Massive engineering undertaking. Everyone downstream is going to be concerned about what it means if water flow is reduced, and India is very anxious about it. So the Chinese are saying, trust us, we will not do you any harm. Uh, we are very trustworthy, reliable, and we are very consistent with what we do, and so on. So that's the situation. It's going to happen somewhere north of Arunachal Pradesh, close to the India border, and that's the deal. So the question is, what are the Chinese doing? Uh, as you can see, Vikramaditya Rathore is saying that it looked like India and China were going the right track, and China was making the right moves towards de-escalating the tensions with India, but now they're doing this. So yeah, that's how it goes. Okay, there's nothing you can do about it. The Chinese are well within the rights to do what they're doing. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do. It of course is going to affect everybody else. It's going to give China a huge amount of leverage on India and the downstream nations like Bangladesh. And yeah, so that's what happens when another nation controls the heights, the high regions north of you, the downstream, the upstream regions. So it's a lesson that we should learn. I think in the centuries to come, future Indian geopolitical strategists should understand that because of the mistakes we made in the 20th century, we are now suffering from the consequences. And we are kind of in a position where we are, to be very frank, kind of helpless against what the Chinese can do. In the future, borders will change. So, future geopolitical strategists, future leaders of India, future emperors of India should take note of the mistakes the previous generations have made. So, right now, there's nothing we can do about it. What we can do is, yeah, so there's a chance of earthquakes increasing. And what India can do is, India can build multiple dams on the Brahmaputra in the Arunachal Pradesh Assam region that can, cumulatively taken together, prevent any sudden rush of water from causing too much damage. That's going to be an engineering challenge, but I'm sure it can be looked at, and probably the problem can be solved. So that's one thing India could do to mitigate such an eventuality.